Our sheriff has been doing is, or are you talking about Dombkowski mentioned doing it, is doing walkthroughs with our canines. And they've started doing that. I know that Chief Dombkowski brought it up, and I think the sheriff thought, that's a good idea, we should be doing that. The drug problem in the jail that's kind of hit the media it's not as big of an issue as what maybe it's been led to believe. We don't get a lot of drugs in our jail. We keep a pretty secure jail. You can go to prison. I've known lots of people who've gone to prison. I've had Ken that's gone to prison, and they come out, people freely tell you, in the prison systems in Indiana, you can get any kind of drug you want any day of the week. That's just our prison system and how it is, unfortunately. That part's very poor. It's not that way in our jail. I mean, there are times that drugs get snuck in our jail, but it is a rare thing. And when we find drugs, we charge people with it, we take action. One thing, we had some drugs recently, when the jailers got sick, if you remember that, and I think they realized that those were snuck in by a trustee. If you want to know what a trustee is an inmate that's trusty. They call them trustees though. They're trusty. They have short sentences. They have an out date coming up, and they want to stay busy during the day. I mean, if you had to twiddle your thumbs, not doing a whole lot for 24 hours a day, you wouldn't like being in jail. I tell you, it's not a fun place to be. So people that are on good behavior in our jail and have an out date that's not too far off, we'll make them trustees. And they get to work in the kitchen. We have a guy that works with our mechanic out in the garage. We have a couple guys that work with our maintenance, people mowing grass and doing things like that. And those guys that work outside the secure areas of the jail are the ones historically that have brought drugs in. Because it's easy for them to talk to their loved ones, and their loved one can drive by the parking lot and throw a bag out of, meth on the ground, and while they're out mowing the yard or painting the curb or whatever, they can pick that up and sneak it back in. They're supposed to be searched before they come back in, and I don't know what always happens. They get trusty. They get trustworthy, and I think maybe we get a little complacent. I'm not sure. If I was the sheriff, I would not have any trustees that work in non-secure areas of the jail. No, if they can work in the jail, they can work in the kitchen, they can mop floors and sweep in all the secure areas, but we're gonna have our employees do everything else. The mechanic's gonna lose a helper, sorry, but that's just the way it goes. And I'd love, one time we had a mechanical intern that worked, he was an intern. Maybe we can do a program like that, but we don't need to have people that should be locked up in insecure areas. Because as trusty as they may be, they can't be 100% trusted. And then we have problems in our jail. And then we have egg on our face, and it looks bad. We need to keep our jail clean. And that's another responsibility of keeping our people safe. You get a guy that gets high on something and does the swan dive off the top balcony, that's a liability problem right there, big time, So there's a lot to consider there. A lot.
Question.
Yes.
I know it's a pretty general question, but it seems that there's been a fairly profound uptick in violence, and violent crimes here in Tippecanoe County. Just your opinion, what are some reasons for that?
Well, we're getting more and more crowded. You touched on diversity. We are seeing a more diverse, this has been kind of a slow, almost Hallmark movie type town at times, to where, we have people that are raised up here and just live here. But we're getting a lot of people that are coming from larger cities, and I'm not just picking on black people. It would be black people, white people, anybody, Hispanics, any race really, but they're coming from different cultures where, you get people that come from Chicago. Their quality of life up there is not necessarily the same as ours, You get a young black male in Chicago, a lot of times they don't expect to live to see 25. They just don't expect it. Well, their friends didn't, necessarily. And they just think that, they think differently, unfortunately. And they come here, and instead of necessarily embracing, like, hey, this is a safer place, and embracing what we have, they still can act out a little bit and do some of the same things, you know. When we see a lot of those crimes happening, they're happening to those same groups of people that come from big cities. They're the ones in conflict. It's unfortunate. Yes?
I was gonna say, as someone who comes from the Chicago area, it is extremely different.
Yes.
Because I'm used to the not safe area, and I'm more close to Gary, but I come from a not safe area, and it's very different to be closer to a more safer area.
And it's hard to let your guard down.
It is,
and act
it's very
different.
hard.
Yeah, certainly. And we see that, you know. And, you know, in larger cities, there's bigger drug problems. So, and that's the key. The root of almost all evil is drugs. I mean, if your house gets burglarized, it was done by someone that's abusing drugs. I guarantee you. Every time. So drugs are a huge root of the problem. And you go up to where there's high unemployment rates, you know, low quality of life, lots of drug use, lots of drug dealing. You bring that to our area, and it's just, you know, repeat. You know, just come down here and do the same thing. Now, we're fighting back hard, you know, I feel like. Our police agencies here in Tippecanoe County, we're working hard. We really are. We have a drug task force. We don't have any members of our department on the drug task force. Our sheriff is going to take some licks over that right now. You're going to see during this election process. But we've had so many people quit, we had to take the guy that was on the drug task force and put him back on patrol. You know, we're getting back to where our staffing is getting back up where we need to be, and I expect him to go back to the drug task force here soon. Matter of fact, that guy's on my shift, and I expect to lose him, you know. And just any time they're going to come and tell me, hey, we're pulling him, we'll get you somebody else when we get somebody trained. You know? But I think we fight back hard. I think we're trying hard. I think we do a pretty good job, you know. And it's all about, you know, you know, I'd love to see stiffer laws, but then our jails and prisons are getting full. So there's a lot of, you know, give and take on some things. You know, I don't make the laws, I only enforce them. But, you know, there's some laws, I mean, they're almost decriminalizing marijuana. You know, anymore, if you have marijuana and get caught with it, it's not as big a deal as it was 10 years ago, you know. And to get charged with dealing marijuana, you have to have a whole lot more than you did 5 years ago. You know, things are changing. I fully expect marijuana to be legal in Indiana eventually. 10 years from now, maybe? I bet it will be. It could be. We're going towards that direction. But I hate for us to lose ground. But, yeah, I don't make the laws. I'll always enforce them. But I think as leaders in law enforcement, whether you're a sheriff or a chief, I think those people, leaders in law enforcement, need to band together and pressure our legislators to, you know, do the right thing and make the right laws and make them strict to where we can keep them. I mean, if you get caught with a handgun without a permit, does anybody think that's very serious? It's only a misdemeanor. It's just a misdemeanor. You won't see any jail time. But now, if you commit a crime while armed with a gun, then it does enhance a lot of things. But I think there, you know, instead of the enhancement being one step, I think it needs to be 2 or 3 steps. It needs to be a lot worse. You know, I wrote down gun laws. I'm surprised anybody's not brought up gun laws or anything, but you know, people are always asking me, well, what about these ARs and all this? And all I can say about that is we're always going to have the Second Amendment. And the government's never going to take away our guns, I don't think. It's, as a sheriff or as a police officer, period, it's not for me to change them. It's not my law to change. That's our legislators. If you want that law changed, you have to talk to them. If they passed a law tomorrow and said everyone had to turn their guns in, I'd probably just want to quit my job, because what are you going to do? Go door to door, say, I need your guns? That's not going to happen. And there's just thousands and thousands of rifles sold every year. And, you know, Indiana's a very pro-gun state. And I think any lawful citizen ought to be able to carry a gun. You know, if you want to know how I feel about the Second Amendment, That's how I feel. If you're a lawful citizen, you know, now if you have felony convictions, or you're prone to domestic violence, or if you're mentally ill, yeah, you shouldn't have a gun. And there needs to be strict laws prohibiting you from that, so that if you're caught, then you're punished severely, you know. Yes?
Good. Not so much on gun, but talking earlier about how you're not a politician. I mean, that's not,
Yeah.
you're not running for sheriff because it's a political position. But as a sheriff, you have to make a lot of decisions based on politics. So that's something you haven't had to do as an officer, as lieutenant, or pretty much. I mean, but as a sheriff, a lot of your decisions are based on politics, whether you like them or not, and whether you disagree with them or agree with them. But you've got things like, and I'll use this as an example because it's big right now, like out in California, ICE, things like that, and working with, the way they're working with, you know, the federal laws and deportation of convicted criminals that have turned out.
Right.
But what the effect might be, you know, if you're enforcing that 100%, or even what your thoughts are on that, and how that might affect, because people look at, well, if they're going to start deporting them, you know, what about the people that are coming in illegally, that are here working, trying to make a better life, and trying to do better, not just for themselves, but their community. You know, if one law says you have to deport, you know, how is that, you know, what's the relationship in your mind?
Well, I have my own views on all that personally, but as a police officer, we're faced with we have a job to do. If a law is made, we have to enforce it. If there is no law, you know, in place for us to enforce, there's nothing we can do on certain issues. As far as dealing with ICE, we arrest a lot of Hispanics on a weekly basis. You know, typically they don't have driver's licenses because they can't get them. But if we take them to jail, usually they're just booked and released a lot of times. We do run a check on them, and if ICE wants them, if there is a federal hold on them in some way, immigration, you know, because of their past behaviors, then we would hold them and turn them over to them, you know. But a lot of them are just booked in, booked out. You know, everybody that goes, we have a lot of people in jail. It's not necessarily that they're hardened criminals and terribly bad people. Sometimes a good person can have one bad day, you know, and it winds them up in there, you know. And that's anybody, you know. I'd be surprised with a room this big if one of you at least hasn't been to our jail before for something petty, maybe, you know. Although if this room was full, I'd say that with confidence probably. Maybe, you know what I mean? I mean, it's easy to get popped for a DUI, you know, or something like that, or have a suspended license, you know, not maybe be aware of it, and off you go to jail, you know. But, or domestic, you know, sometimes domestic disputes will get out of hand and someone winds up in jail, you know. It's not the end of the world, you know. A lot of times the prosecutor doesn't file on those things, but hope I'm answering your question. I got on a tangent. You said something about, you know, politics, you know, weighing my decisions. I would hope not. I feel like by being the way I am, I don't owe anybody anything. In a few weeks here in April, we'll have to turn in our finance reports for our campaign funds. You know, we did that earlier at the end of the year. We all had to turn in a report. We'll have to turn in another one. It's called a pre-primary finance report. And you'll see that I've not hardly raised any money. I'm spending my own money. I got these flyers right here. I was going to pass out one to each of you. I bought these, you know, for the most part. I have had some contributions, but it's hard for me to go to friends, let alone strangers, and say, hey, give me money, you know. I'm trying to accomplish something here. Give me money so that I can buy billboards and yard signs. And that stuff gets expensive. And quite frankly, I'm going to go into a bit of a debt here. When this thing is all said and done, I'm going to have to look back and go, okay, how much money am I going to pay back to myself? You know, because I'll be in the hole when this is all said and done. I'm already in the hole, you know. But I'm passionate about it because this is my department. You know, these are my people I work with. They're my family, the Brown and Dan family. You know, I've known these people, most of them since they started. There's out of 150, there's 3 or 4 guys that have worked there as long as I have. That's it, you know. And only 2 of them are officers. One of them's retiring here pretty soon. You know, I've worked there so long. Those are my people, and I want what's best for them. And our morale is really low right now. And I think by being more efficient and doing right and being there, you know, our current sheriff, you heard, he's very part-time. He has 2 full-time jobs, you know. And, you know, a man can't serve 2 masters. You cannot. And it's unfortunate. I can tell you this, I'm full-time and overtime right now. I work my 84 hours every 2 weeks, plus training, court, overtime. I work at the high school at least 2 times a month, sometimes 4 times a month. I do extra patrols like DUI patrols and seatbelt patrols. Sorry if you ever get a seatbelt ticket. A lot of people disagree with that law, but you know, I do a lot of that. In a month's time, I'm banking some hours. I've tried to slack off on some of that extra stuff in the last couple months. You know, I'm only working next month at McCutcheon 2 days. I know, you know, because I got this going on, and I can only do this on my days off. But you know, I do that stuff. I'm on the dive team. I'm part of the negotiations. I'm a field training officer. It's not like being involved in the department. It's my second family. My wife would argue sometimes that it's my first family. You know, I've left her on the side of the road sometimes when the call goes out and she's with me off duty. I dump her and I'm gone. You know, she can tell stories about that. Our kids can tell stories about that. And it's just, it defines who I am. I can't campaign in my uniform. That's a misdemeanor for me to do that. You know, that's some campaign rule. I had to learn about that. Actually, early on, TV-18 came and interviewed me about something, and I was in uniform, and hey, don't do that. You know, it wasn't really that I was campaigning. I wasn't knocking on someone's door, but I was being questioned about sheriff campaign stuff. I didn't know, you know. But so there's a lot of rules I'm learning about. Politics is, you know, you can lose friends over politics. You all know that. You know, especially with the election, the presidential election we had. You know, I've seen people just split, you know, because of their different views. And I'm trying not to be that way. I don't want to owe anybody anything, any favors, you know, or anything like that. The people at the sheriff's department, largely, most all of them, a great percentage of them, support me and want me to be the sheriff. But they can't openly support me, you know, because our current sheriff, we have, the last election, Dave Heath ran, we have a sergeant that helped him with his campaign, did a lot of work for him, really rooted for him. Barry came in, put that guy on nights. He's still on nights, you know. He's almost my age with a couple of kids, you know, and he's working nights, and that's where he'll be as long as the current sheriff's there. And so, you know, guys that are supporting me, they're doing it quietly behind the scenes. And, you know, if you ever talk to one, they'll support me, obviously, openly. But they're not going to have signs in their yards. A lot of them, some of them have asked me, you know, but I think they live far enough out that they'll never see, you know. But I just hope that when this is all said and done, you know, I don't have anybody coming to me saying, hey, you owe me, and I want you to do this, you know. I don't want to be that guy. And I think I've kept myself from being that guy so far, which is very important to me, you know.
Woody, I want to thank you.
I know we did go an hour, and the chief is probably out here.
Well, maybe, I don't know, but
He's
thank
notorious for being
you.
here. I appreciate it. Thank you for, I do want to give you each one of these. Now, you can have